Hello, welcome once again to Lehto's Law. I'm Steve Lehto. Today we're talking about a couple topics that trigger a lot of people: lie detectors, polygraphs, those kind of things, and also traffic ticket quotas, whether or not police have them and what that means. And this comes to me from a story that George passed along out of Ohio. Thank you very much, George. And it's the I Team, Fox 8's I Team out of Ohio. Headline says lie detector test given to local police officer over traffic tickets. And when I saw this, my first thought was, oh, this cop is writing tickets and he's cheating somehow and they're trying to catch him cheating. What's that all about? No, that's not it at all. It's not it at all. The heart of this is traffic ticket quotas. The Fox 8 I Team found that the Independence Police Department hired an outside firm with a lie detector to question officers on the force after the I Team had reported on traffic tickets there. On Friday, they tracked down the Independence Police Chief in his parking lot, and he refused to answer questions about any of this. He said, "Send me an email with questions," to which they responded, "We've done that." He then said, "Well, you haven't sent any questions, you've sent record requests. Send me an email." So this guy's really good at really splitting hairs here on the words. In January, the I Team had revealed internal police documents which outlined targets for traffic tickets to be written by Independence patrol officers. By targets in that setting, we're talking about numbers. That is, they'd actually tell police officers, here's how many tickets you should be writing, i.e., a quota. Multiple sources said that led to an internal investigation looking at least in part, how those documents ended up in the hands of news reporters. So the news reporters, talking to the police chief, asked him about how he's spending taxpayer money to find out who gave them the documents. And this is what's interesting. Whenever you hear about an organization that gets caught doing something wrong, and they immediately launch an investigation, not into what they were doing wrong, but how they got caught. Now, if that happens in a corporation, that's okay because it's a private company and they can presumably spend their money as they see fit in an attempt to make a profit. But when it's a governmental organization like the police, those are taxpayer dollars being wasted to root out somebody in their midst who gave something to the news to say, hey, look, what we're doing here is wrong. It's a whistleblower, okay? And so they actually apparently hired somebody with a polygraph to come in and polygraph the cops to find out which one of them narked them out. Ironically, a narc being another nickname for a cop. He responded to that question with, send me an email. There's a woman who lives in the area who's been active with senior citizen groups, and she said, we've heard about these new traffic ticket violation quotas. And she went to a city council meeting to ask Independence town leaders about this. She received no response. So the investigation team here requested the contract between Independence and the firm brought in with the lie detector. Under the contract, Independence agreed to spend about $5,000, and the reporters contacted that company who would not comment. So $5,000 of taxpayer money was spent to hire a polygrapher to come in and make the cops take polygraphs to find out who leaked documents to the news. During the internal investigation, one police supervisor retired. Now, that could just be a coincidence because he never supplied any information to the I Team, according to reporters. But multiple sources said he left under pressure. Earlier, another officer got a written reprimand for not writing enough tickets. And I've told you before, I've represented a lot of people with traffic tickets, hundreds. And I've spoken to a lot of police officers, prosecutors, judges, you name it, other defense attorneys, about everything to do with traffic tickets. Everything from direct conversations about it to just shooting the breeze out in the hallway. And I can tell you right now that some cops will openly tell you, yes, we are told you got to write this many tickets. Now, they don't get fired if they fall short one ticket. They don't get like Employee of the Month plaque if they write more tickets. But they all have a number. They know what they're supposed to write. But I've also had cops go, no such thing. And so it probably does vary from department to department. But the interesting thing is that if you're in a department and an officer gets a written reprimand for not writing enough tickets, if that's all there is to that story, there's something wrong there. Because let's suppose you're a police officer. Now, you could go over to the local highway, and there's a highway about 2 miles that way. and sit there with a radar gun and write tickets all day long. Everyone's speeding. But the problem, of course, is you wouldn't be doing anything else. In other words, while writing tickets at the side of the road, you can't be investigating break-ins, you can't be investigating robberies, you can't be investigating carjackings because you're writing tickets at the side of the road. So I believe that if I was a police chief, that if somebody didn't write enough tickets, I'd call them and say, hey, Officer Johnson, let me ask you a question. Last month, you wrote 300 tickets. This month, you wrote 200. Why is that? And he might say, oh, don't you remember? I spent a whole bunch of time on that string of break-ins over on Main Street. I was leading the investigation, and while I was doing that, I couldn't write tickets over on the highway. And I'd say, oh, okay. But one of the other things about all of this, and it's so subtle that a lot of people miss this, is that police officers can do several things while they're working. Okay? They can write tickets, they can investigate crimes, they can do public relations work. They can simply walk down Main Street, smile, and be a presence. I mean, really, okay? But not everything a police officer does generates revenue. And that's one of the most common complaints I see on YouTube is people comment and say, hey, by the way, Steve, police officers are simply generating revenue. And many of them, that appears to be their job because an officer got a written reprimand for not writing enough tickets. That's what they're saying here. They're not saying that more tickets equals better law enforcement. They want those tickets written because they get the money from the tickets, okay? But if you're investigating the break-in over on Main Street, unless you write a ticket to somebody, it doesn't make you any money. So if you look at your law enforcement entity as a revenue-generating device, if it makes a lot of money, it creates a profit. If it doesn't make a lot of money, it's actually a drag on something because it's costing money. Taxpayers are paying the money to run the police department, right? Initially, the money to run the department comes from taxpayers. And if they bring in more than they cost, they're a profit center. And if they don't bring in enough to cover their costs, then they're a loss, I guess. But that shouldn't be how we examine law enforcement. Law enforcement's not there to simply generate profit, okay? So the point is, if the guy's not writing enough tickets, that's the wrong way to phrase it. Was he doing his job? If he was doing his job, yes, fine, ignore the quota that doesn't exist. And if he's not doing his job, that's a problem. But you don't gauge his job performance and how much money how much revenue he generated. That's the wrong way of looking at it. So again, the I-team got no answers when they talked to the chief out in the parking lot. He said, I'm late to an appointment, sir. The I-team has also asked how much money exactly was spent on this little endeavor. And as of right now, the police chief said he hasn't gotten a final bill yet. He'll get back to them. So the chief also said he does not have any specific file or paperwork on the internal investigation. So that is an interesting situation. But I also have to mention polygraphs or lie detectors. Because anytime I mention them, people say, Steve, they don't work. They're nonsense. It's like believing in voodoo. No, there's a science to it. It might not be as, say, predictable as, chemistry or physics or something, but it is a recognized enough science to where there are people who will tell you that they work more often than simply voodoo. But as I've pointed out, simply putting a lie detector on a table and pointing at it and going, you want to take the lie detector? You can judge a lot and learn a lot from the response. Now, I've had people say, Steve, I would say no, it's out of principle because lie detectors don't work. And I say, why do you say that? Oh, well, I've talked about it. I've done some internet research. Ever talked to a professional polygrapher who actually worked for, I don't know, the state police or the FBI? Ever talked to one of them? Because those are real people. And of course, no, they never have. I have. And I'm here to tell you that the notion that there are people out there who can fail a polygraph, who are innocent, it's possible. And are there people out there who could pass when they're guilty? It's possible, but it's not the most common thing that happens. But like I said, when you see somebody walk into a room and they see the polygraph and they freak out, it's not that they're freaking out because they're about to be subjected to something that is unpredictable or unreliable. They know that there's a good chance they're about to get caught if in fact they're guilty. Now, again, has anybody who's ever been innocent failed a polygraph? It's possible. It's possible. But I suspect when the police bring one in to use it on their own people, it shows you at least what the police think of polygraphs. And, the police who sat down to take the polygraphs, likewise, probably believed in them too. So, you can take that for what it's worth. I'm not saying it proves anything, but it certainly is enlightening that the police would bring in the polygrapher to polygraph their own people in an attempt to catch who it was who narked them out when they were doing something wrong. It's the snake eating its own tail, or perhaps a rat eating its own tail. Questions or comments, put them below. Otherwise, talk to you later. Bye bye.